Hi guys, and welcome to part 4 of the guide for the transition to ED from the standard Orb of Storm setup. We are going to go through Act 4, in which we have a few goals. These goals are going to be primarily making sure that our resistances are set, because the resistance part is definitely the most important here. Let me check on the list for Act 4. So resistances, and also staunching flask is something very helpful to get in, like especially before getting into the belly of the beast. So in this act, if you don't have a 4-link, you still want to look into checking every vendor on your way, so that you can find the 4 links. Anytime you're in the city, you just want to check and get a 4-link if you don't have one yet, and you're going to use that for your main damaging skill. So it's going to be either Orb of Storms or it's going to be Pyroclast Mine, depending on which setup you went for. I talk about these setups in the previous video. In the skill tree, we are slowly moving to the nodes right next to the chaos damage over time, so that in the at the end of Act 5, beginning of Act 6, we're going to be able to respec like the 8 points that we have in the elemental damage, and we're going to be able to put them into chaos damage over time multiplier. So far we are unascended yet, but we're going to ascend after we get the nearest waypoint. So we're still going through the mines. The Cold Snap is still one-shotting plenty of mobs, so that you can see I get Onslaught proc. It's that like orange with red icon on the buff bar, so you can see I'm getting it consistently. Most packs the Onslaught still procs, which means we're using the skill correctly, right? The Cold Snap is one-shotting mobs and giving us Onslaught, because the damage over time from it does not grant you Onslaught. You have to kill with hits for that to happen. Still, we want to collect transmutes and alterations, because we will be crafting a bunch of gear. So definitely make sure to pick up enough rare items and magic items, so that you can have a healthy amount of alterations and transmutations. As you can see, I have a few here, because it costs 1 transmutation to put the tier 1 resists on your gear, and you want to have like maybe 4 or 5 of them, something like that. I'm still checking for 4 links, because I definitely still need them, and this is where I'm gonna ascend. This is I'm pretty much level either 32 or 33, something like that, and this is a good time to ascend. And we have a choice. I've seen Tai Killer with this setup go for the frenzy and power charge generation. However, I feel like this doesn't do enough for us in terms of single target, in terms of fighting bosses. It does help in the clear a little bit, but so does the other node, that the 50% increased damage over time and recovery of life, mana, and energy shield, which helps also with being able to do any type of map modes, even no region map modes. And I don't like respecing and already spending more regrets than we already have to switch that ascendancy point, because that I will definitely not run that later. So that's my personal preference, to not run the frenzy and power charges from that skill, especially considering that we are already getting frenzy charges from the Cold Snap. So I feel like we benefit even less from that, and then later on we are going full on 100% all damage over time, so the other damage over time node will benefit us a little bit more. So that's my personal preference. That's how I prefer to do it, and it does work really nicely. You will have absolutely no mana problems from that point on, and especially considering that you might be going a little bit of a hybrid, since usually you will go CI or even low life, then having that recovery of life and energy shield at the same time will definitely be helpful, because it will help your survivability. Like when you rely on energy shield and life, recovering both at the same time gives you like double recovery, right? Because if you have lost some health and all energy shield, you're recovering both at the same time. Pre-stacking Pyroclast Mine on Azaro, it's fairly easy. We get a bunch of treasure keys because I didn't bother killing other targets. You don't really need to do that. We get a bunch of currency from here. We get to enchant our gloves, and then we go for this bottom node. Patient Reaper is the name. You could go for the Frenzy Power Charge generation. I think it's like slightly faster clear, but like very slightly, because the power charges will give us very little. Like we don't need the mana. The mana actually is like completely redundant, because you're gonna, if you go the other way, you actually have more mana regen. So I prefer going it that way for the Patient Reaper. I think it's a better option. Still using Pyroclast Mine on tougher single target enemies, and skipping some arenas here in this zone. This one was going to the left and I actually failed the skip here, but I can fight anyway because I should be pretty low level here. If you are low level at this point, what you want to do is first you do the Essence Dream, and then you take the waypoint in the Grand Arena zone. Then you do the Calm's Dream and make sure to kill a lot of stuff. And yeah, you take the waypoint, you go to the other one, because both of the first zones, both of the dreams are lower level than the Calm's Stronghold and Grand Arena. So you want to do the lower level zones first, both of them, and then both of the higher level zones. And this zone gives a lot of experience. The Calm's Dream, and the next zone after that, and Calm's gives a lot of experience. This is a skip. We can hop up on that ledge and save a little bit of time with the Smoke Mine. And then Calm's Stronghold. What am I going to do in... I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to now craft my gear. So before entering Calm's Stronghold, you really need to make sure that your gear, that you have decent fire res. If you have let's say below 60% fire res, be extremely cautious. I hope you're gonna have bonkers damage, because there are a lot of projectiles flying around from all of the sides of the Calm's arena. So you're gonna get blasted by fire damage if your fire res is not good. So right now I'm looking at all the vendors for good links, and I'm just gonna craft my items. I'm basically just going to craft items, just look for enough links, look for items that will give you the colors. So if you have a couple of chromatics, and let's say you find a 3-link or a 4-link, look for the base that has intellect requirement if you need blue gems, dexterity requirement if you need green gems, and strength requirement if you get red, if you want red gems, right? So I'm crafting these items. I'm going to upgrade my 2 stone rings and put some extra resistances, put resistances on the belt, put it on the gloves. If there is empty suffix, I put resist. If there is empty prefix, I put life. And that way, basically, you can fix any type of shortage in gear, like any shortcomings of your gear, you can fix in Act 4 by just crafting the items yourself, as you can see, like I am doing, right? So all you want to do is just make sure that there is some life and some resist on pretty much all of your pieces of gear, and that way you're going to be really safe. So here, just looking for what is open, like prefix or suffix, and then crafting the other options. So here there is no open suffix, but there is an open prefix, so I craft extra life. And my character just gained a lot of life and a lot of resistances, and now I have capped fire and capped cold, and those are the resistances that you will need in the Act 4, right? The fire for fighting Calm, and the cold for fighting the rest. So next I'm looking at the flask. I rolled Bleeding Flask, and that's the flask that I rolled it on Sanctified Flask, because you can use it from level 36, and 36 is when I enter the Belly of the Beast zone, and that's the zone where you start encountering bleed in a very nasty form of puncture. So these mobs in the Belly of the Beast can puncture you, and if you don't want to stop, and if you don't want to take a massive amount of damage and potentially die, then you're gonna have to have bleed removal, and in the long run it's actually gonna speed you up, because you're gonna have less dangerous situations. You're just gonna be able to cancel that dot and not worry about having to stop moving, because when you're moving you're taking a lot more damage from bleeding. So we're fighting Calm, pretty easy with the Pyroclast Mines. And now we're going to the other zone, which is the Grand Arena, and we also have Cold Res now, so we're gonna be able to do it easily. I'm skipping all the Delirium just so that this doesn't influence how you can level this build in the next league, because in the next league maybe you don't get any good rewards during the story, so that's why I'm doing it that way, because Delirium is extremely rewarding. It gives an extreme amount of currency. So it's just like an easy mode kind of cheating. You're always going to have enough transmutations, alterations, and potentially really good items and maybe even more uniques from doing Delirium. So that's why I am definitely skipping Delirium for the purpose of this guide. So just blasting through the arena. Pretty good single target damage still. Making sure to use Cold Snap, because the damage over time of Cold Snap is actually pretty significant now. You want to make sure also, depending on which boss, but it takes a little bit of practice, I guess, when do you detonate the mines. So bosses have a little bit of damage resistance at the beginning of when they spawn, when they become targetable. They have a little bit of a damage resistance, so you cannot like pre-stack all of the damage. It's there to counteract that playstyle. However, with the Pyroclast mine, you still want to detonate it a little bit early so that it keeps stacking. And then after you press, like you stack a bunch of them, you press detonate once, and then after like 1.5 to 2 seconds, there is a timing there where you can keep throwing mines and they will keep adding to the same chain, to the same sequence of detonation, and that will give you more and more projectiles every time it detonates, and it creates like a huge amount of projectiles and boosts your damage a lot. So if you want, you can practice doing that with Pyroclast Mine. It will definitely help your single target, and it doesn't matter where you throw them, you can keep throwing it wherever the boss is going, and it will keep the chain sequence as long as you're throwing it properly, and you can extend the chain sequence beyond the 15 or 16 mines that you would stack normally. So we're going through the belly of the beast, and I do have the Sanctified Flask or Staunching Flask, as you can see, so I'm able to easily remove the bleed, and I don't have to worry about the bleed mobs ever again. And from this point on, I pretty much always have a bleed flask. Like whenever I upgrade my flask, I make sure to make it bleeding and bleed removal, which is staunching suffix. And if you don't know how to do it, if you don't have enough alterations, all you need to do is just roll it so that you have empty suffix, and then you can beast craft it. You go to your menagerie and you pick off staunching, and you can put it on a flask with empty suffix, so you have a guaranteed deterministic way of crafting bleed removal flask every single time. And then, just like with the wands, I recommend saving it in your stash after you get done with that flask and move on to the next tier of flask. And I wouldn't upgrade it every single time. I think like maybe 2 more after this one is what I do. Like I do this one, and then the next two tiers, like every other tier basically, I would upgrade it. Because next character you're gonna level is probably going to need that, and it's gonna be similar level that it's gonna need this flask. So to save yourself some time, I would definitely put it in your stash and not throw it away, just like with the ones that you are crafting. It's like a very good leveling item, pretty much. It's more helpful than many of the leveling uniques that you can buy that people recommend in guides. Gotta do a little bit of an inventory Tetris. We're slowly gonna move to the through the Dex and Strength node down below Shadow to go toward the Chaos damage over time with Chaos resistance. That's a really good, nice cluster to take, because the Chaos resistance is gonna help you a little bit in the second part of the story. Getting a lot of currency, checking for 4 links. And time to fight Malachi and conclude Act 4. If you have any questions about this guide, about leveling this type of a character, make sure to post them below. And in the next guide, we're gonna basically conclude the guide with showing you how you switch to ED Contagion and Blight setup. We're gonna go through Act 5, and then in the beginning of Act 6, we're gonna do the swap, and you're gonna see exactly how little it takes to just swap completely the build around. Here, if you know the order of hearts, you can pre-stack them a bit. It's first top right and then bottom and then top left. The hearts that Malachi activates once you take like 1/3 of his life every single time. So you can pre-stack it a little bit if you think he's gonna take enough damage. So that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this guide is helpful. See you in the next one.